Nevertheless, the world is pushing for net zero by 2050. The International Energy Agency says reducing global carbon dioxide emissions to net zero by 2050 calls for nothing less than a complete transformation of how we produce, transport, and consume energy. And basically, they want us to get rid of all the coal, oil, and gas, 80% of what we do, replace it with wind, solar, and biofuels. And we've been working on this for a few decades. How do you think the transition's going? Oh, wait a minute, one more thing. I jumped a slide ahead. We also have 14 states and 200 cities that have signed up to net zero by 2050, and they all want us to build wind turbines and solar farms. So how do we think this is going? Well, the world has spent $5 trillion in about the last 15 years on renewables, trying to make this transition. And this gray curve is the world consumption of energy share of hydrocarbons. We've had some events. The United Nations formed the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 1989. The Kyoto Protocol Treaty signed in 1996. We had eventually about 180 nations that were signatories to that treaty. The United States was a big exception. And now we have 300,000 wind turbines installed worldwide. But the share of world energy from coal, oil, and gas is still about 82%, same as it was in 1999. Here's another graph I call the energy mountain. Global consumption of energy has tripled since 1965, and it's actually accelerated after the year 2000. I plotted on here the amount of wind and solar that are supplying that energy. Except for the COVID year, when we had a big decline in global economy, renewables have never been able to provide enough energy for the increase every year in global energy consumption, let alone replace our traditional fuels. Net zero is a zero growth policy, a no growth policy. From 2000 to 2021, world energy use was up 47%. But the International Energy Agency is proposing that energy use decline by 8% from 2021 to 2050. Carbon dioxide emissions were up 44% over that period. The EIA says that has to decline by 40% by 2050. Not very likely, folks. By the way, how many of you have an air conditioner at home? Probably most of you, right? Oop, how'd I get there? I'm skipping slides here. So do you know that your air conditioner uses more electricity than a third of the world's people do on a given day? There's a huge need for electricity in the world. 700 million people don't have access to electricity. Another 2 billion people have blackouts every day or brownouts every day. And if you look at vehicles, we have about one vehicle for every person in the United States. There's about one vehicle for every 20 people in India or in Southeast Asia. We use 15 or 20 times the plastic of people in developing nations. So there's a tremendous need for growth for these people, yet we have the major organizations of the world telling them that they can't use coal, oil, and gas. You all understand that nothing is zero emissions, right? If you build any kind of building, and you put glass in it, and you put copper in it for piping, and you put ceramic in it, and you put wood in it, and you put steel in it, you put concrete in it. All of those things release carbon dioxide when they are manufactured, and then when they're transported on trucks or other transportation. You can't even build a grass hut without releasing CO2. If you cut down the wood and you cut down the grass, you build a hut, you release carbon dioxide.